producer's experiment that's on packet page 5 is one that we can't really do in the classroom because we don't have the equipment. So what happens here is that they wanted to determine what plants need to produce food. So students put 500 grams of bean seeds in each of 6 containers that were filled with clean, dry sand. They added a gram of dry fertilizer in each planter. So you're going to notice all of these 6 planters were exactly the same. They then took the planters, they put them in 6 identical environmental chambers. So picture almost like a box of sorts where nothing can get in and out. But water, light, and air could be controlled. The gases in air included oxygen, carbon dioxide, and nitrogen. So again, everything's still continuing to be the same. 3 weeks later, students collected, they dried, and they weighed the seeds or the plants. Because the seeds that they put in were dry when they put them in, they had to take any plants or seeds that were wet, and they had to actually dry them out. And 3 weeks later, they made this chart to collect their data. So if you look at environment A, you are going to see that environment A is our control. We talked about controlling things in biosphere. So there's lots of different variables. Our variables are water, light, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and nitrogen. In order to test each of these, we can only change one at a time. So our control, if you see it across this row here, shows that in environment A, they get water, light, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and nitrogen. For all of them, the starting mass was 500. We learned that up above. The ending mass for my control, environment A, was 551. That means that the mass went up 51 grams. If we continue to environment B, and I look across, it got water, light, oxygen, carbon dioxide, just like environment A, except the difference was that unlike environment A, they did not include nitrogen. After 3 weeks, when they collected and dried the seeds and plants, there was a positive change of 52 grams. So even though nitrogen was not present, the plant still grew, just like environment A. If we move to environment C, it received water, light, oxygen, and nitrogen, just like environment A, but this time they decided to not include any carbon dioxide. When you look 3 weeks later, there was not a change. There was 0 grams of change. It is still 500 grams. Moving on to D. Starting to notice a pattern. This time, if you look up at the top, oxygen was not included, but everything else. 3 weeks later, there was a positive 49 gram change. Environment E. Light was not included, so they kept this plant in complete darkness for 3 weeks, and at the end of the 3 weeks, it was 500 grams. So therefore, there was no change. And finally, for the last one, environment F. The plant was given light, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and nitrogen, but not water. What happened? There was no change, which means that the plant didn't grow. So what's the effect of the 5 environmental factors on the plant growth? What was our results? Well, if we look at our first one, we look here at nitrogen. Okay, excluding nitrogen from the experiment still got us 52 grams of growth. Excluding the next row, excluding my carbon dioxide here, which we can write as CO2, there was no growth by the plants. Okay, it was 0. Environment D, when there was no oxygen or O2, we come over here and look. The plant grew and increased its mass. Oops, Let's grow, sorry. Increased its mass by 49 grams. The next row was 0, and that was light. So when there was no light, there was no growth. It grew 0 grams was the change in mass. And finally, in my last environment, we have water. So they did not give the plant any water, those seeds, for 3 weeks. There was no growth again. So now that we look at these numbers, what can we conclude? We can conclude by looking at this that when nitrogen was taken away in environment B, the plant still grew. And when oxygen was taken away, the plant still grew. But when the plant didn't get carbon dioxide or light or water, there was no growth. So down here at the bottom, you can conclude that plants need carbon dioxide and light and water in order to grow, because we proved up above without them there was no growth. So you need to write that in your own words down here at the bottom. So we learned by looking at this experiment, because there was no growth here, or here in these 3 experiments up above here, we learned that plants need carbon dioxide, oxygen, and water.